Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick. Visit us at IHateCritics.net, everyone'scriticpodcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. CriticsPod is our handle. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Alexa, Stitcher, all your podcatchers. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. We'll read any reviews we get on the air. And then Patreon, IHateCritics.net/Patreon. It's the best way to help support the podcast. There is also the PayPal link that's on IHateCritics.net, as well as our merch tab if you want to pick up any podcast merch. Otherwise, we'll jump right into the podcast. This should be a fun week. I don't know about you. This is the kind of... I don't love every movie we're going to talk about, but they're all at least original ideas. They're not. You don't see a lot of studio involvement, so I'm kind of looking forward to.
Aside from the new release, they're all A24 movies.
Right.
So yeah, they tend to find the most unique movies available.
And even the new release seemed to have little studio involvement. It just seemed to.
Unfortunately, in case of the box office.
Right. But let's start with our trailers. We'll start with The King, Netflix movie.
Why don't I give a fuck about this? I really just don't care at all. And I kind of had the same reaction, even to like a movie that I should have cared about, that Chris Pine movie that was set back in the day, whatever it was. I just don't care about the Middle Ages. Or whatever the fuck this is set, 1800. I don't know when the fuck this is set. I don't care. I don't care about kings. I don't care about swords and
sandals.
All Spartacus isn't bad. I just there's nothing about this that gets me to give a damn. I mean, I like Joel Edgerton a lot. Timothy Chalamet is a hell of an actor. Pattinson's been making great choices. I don't care about this time period at all, and I'm not remotely interested.
And the crazy thing is, you don't have to see it unless we have a slow week on the podcast and you decide, hey, let's just do The King. I didn't get the release date. I forgot to look for it, but it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Eventually, probably October. I'm kind of with you.
It's showing at Venice this week.
Oh, it is? Oh. I'm with you. That said, sometimes, when you let your guard down, you can be surprised. Not often, especially in this case, but there is a lot of great people behind it, so who knows?
I'm rather infamous for not liking Braveheart either, so.
Right, but I mean, Braveheart's kind of easy.
Mainstream?
It's mainstream, but then when you watch it, it is pretty, I don't know. There's two movies. You have the movie when you're away from it, the opinion you have, and then when you're in it, it's like, oh, this is actually pretty good. I don't know. That's me. And then there's The Spy, Sacha Baron Cohen not being funny.
Intriguing, I guess. I like that. I think I like the approach that they're taking of the idea of a spy who kind of gets lost between what's real and what's not real. He's living a life in Damascus, Syria. He's a spy for Israel. He's playing both sides as a spy, and he begins to enjoy life in Damascus a little too much and has to be constantly reminded that, hey, that's not your real life. But his real life isn't glamorous, whereas he's a big shot in Damascus. And so I kind of like the duality that they're playing there. And I think Sacha Baron Cohen is uniquely built for that kind of duality. I think he's shown that in even his Borat,
right?
Or the other characters that he's created that are this very unique persona that he creates that are very obvious persona. Yeah, no,
the choice of him, playing the lead in this movie is what, one, probably got on Netflix, but two, is what has me interested. It comes out next week, so it will be part of the podcast, especially with nothing else coming out next week. But I am, if nothing else, intrigued. Spy movies can usually be fun. This one appears to be on a true story, if I'm not mistaken. Probably not as fun as like Donnie Brasco or something like that, or some other James Bond type movies, but interesting if nothing else. So I'm curious how that'll play out. And then there's The Joker, which also had some news to go along with. The first reviews came out with it.
Yeah, the first reviews. It's a solid trailer, and I still remain interested in this movie. It was fun to watch Twitter the last couple of days though, with the first reviews coming out and the reaction. I mean, very positive. Lots of very positive critics, but it's interesting. Male critics are going crazy for it, calling it the greatest comic book movie in history. Mostly the internet critics, the newspaper guys. The older critics aren't really having much to say yet. And then the female critics are going, hang on a second. Like Stephanie Zacharek, especially in Time, has a really tremendous review of this movie. It's a negative review. She didn't care for it, but her review is very reasoned and exceptionally well written. And that was the one that struck me the most, especially when you're reading all these tweets from people like, unanimous praise for Joker. Everybody loves it. Hang on. She's the critic for Time fucking magazine. Can we slow down and maybe talk to her? Maybe one of the highest profile critics in the country. Maybe point that out. Much of this, they keep using the buzzword incel a lot. That gets dropped in a lot. There was even a big Twitter controversy over a guy who posted a review on some random message board where he did so in the character of an incel, and then a bunch of people grabbed that and said, "Oh God, look what has the Joker wrought?" and then he goes, "Hang on, no, I was being sarcastic."
Wow.
Yeah, it's a chilling review. It really is. The way he talks about the Joker and he refers to a woman that he was dating as the female known as Veronica. And that is the kind of the way that when you watch these incel forums, that's the way they talk. Is that the only buzzword he didn't use was femoid, which is a bizarre thing that they use. But he mentioned chads. Do you know what a chad is?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a creepy ass review, exceptionally well written from that perspective. If you're aware of incel culture, incel is the involuntary celibate, men who feel that they cannot attract women, and they've built up a great deal of hatred and mistrust that they spew out in these forums by themselves, 4chan, 8chan, that kind of stuff.
So is the negative review about how the Joker hates women, is that kind of what it's...
Not necessarily. She just thinks it's more of and now I'm trying to recall it. It wasn't just about hating women. It wasn't even really about hating women, although it was an aspect of playing toward that incel culture and kind of taunting that and kind of taunting the idea, and like the concern that a lot of those people in that culture are going to miss the joke at their expense and see it more as praise and excitement for them. Like, you know how somebody is the subject of a joke but they don't realize it? That's kind of the concern here, is that this movie doesn't stick the landing on making those people understand, hey, this is meant as a satire of you and not in praise of you.
I mean, having not seen the movie, Joker is kind of a universally known character. Obviously, people are going to miss the point, but it does seem like, he is a bad guy.
Right, yeah. But the worry is that people could see him, this version of the Joker, as sort of a heroic character, because he is the center of the film as opposed to being, Batman's villain.
Kind of like those Ayn Randians that turn to quote-unquote Satan, even though they don't really believe they use that character as their... Gotcha. Interesting. I'm still curious.
Even with, the positive reviews, it's still, 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes in terms of positive reviews, so.
That's fair. Let's go to a movie that its Rotten Tomato score has improved, but as of last week was actually getting hit hard by critics, is Don't Let Go.
Yeah, Don't Let Go stars David Oyelowo in a movie directed by the director of Mad Creek, which is a really great film from 2005 that a lot of people have forgotten about. This is the first movie he's made in about 12 years, I think, since that film. The idea here is that David Oyelowo plays a detective who's got a very close relationship with his niece, who is the girl from A Wrinkle in Time, Storm Reed. She and her father, Brian Tyree Henry, and her mother are murdered And after the murder, as he's mourning the loss of his niece, who he's extraordinarily close to, his phone rings. And eventually, after kind of disbelieving it, he finally does answer it, and it's her. And he realizes that she is somehow calling him from 2 weeks in the past, and prior to, obviously, when she was killed. And so he begins trying to pump her for information to try and figure out a way to solve her murder without telling her that she's been killed. And that's a really fun dynamic that this movie plays. This movie is like a wonderful thought experiment in how to make this thriller and how to make this work to where you can paint yourself into a few corners and find ways to keep the audience off balance. And I really loved that. I really loved the way that they play with time in this movie. This is some really smart direction and an amazing performance by David Oyelowo. He is so passionate and so excited, and you can just see the wheels turning constantly. Like if you're somebody who gets into that whole thing, well, why? Why is she able to call him from the past? If you're going to get hung up on that, you're probably not going to like this movie.
Right.
But if you're somebody who just gets invested in him, he sells the premise so hard in how he's puzzling it all together that I really just stopped caring about that immediately and immediately became invested in him and the way he was trying to figure it out. And you just see the wheels turning constantly. The way he's kind of manipulating her, to try and help solve her murder without telling her what's happened is really a really strong way to drive the second act of this movie. And then something happens at the midpoint that you're like, oh shit, really?
Yeah.
That was really great. What a smart way to play this. This movie really makes a lot of great decisions like that throughout. I also love the way they use they take a common trope that oftentimes turns into a mistake of this kind of thriller. They cast a couple of actors who are obviously there for a reason, Alfred Molina and Michael T. Williamson. And the way that they use them to keep you off balance is the way that, oftentimes they make the mistake, like, oh, well, you've hired that guy? Well, clearly, like, that guy's the bad guy, right?
Right.
The economy of characters tells you have to come back to that guy. But the way they use both of these guys and both performances are so interesting that they don't ever fall into a very particular way of seeing those types of characters. And I really liked the way that those two characters played out. I was really impressed by both of those performances, and especially by the way the director played them out.
Yeah, I like this movie. I don't love it. Like you said, if you get hung up on the premise, I guess you're definitely not going to... You're just going to sit there and your wheels are going to spin and you're going to hate it. But I didn't get hung up on it. And as for an audience review, you just go there to turn your... I don't want to say turn your brain off, because that's not what you're doing here. But, when you fall into this movie and you just kind of forget about everything else and you get invested, it's a fun little ride that kind of has you guessing, and you never really quite guess what's going to happen. You always feel like everyone's in danger the whole time. It's really... They do a great job of that. You're correct. The performance of David Oyelowo or whatever, however you say it. I'm not a good talker, but I'm a podcaster apparently. It's fantastic. I thought her performance was great. I thought the performances all around were great. I guess I would say there were a couple things that kind of keep it from being great. For me, there's a couple moves where it's just like, if you had done this instead of that, this would have people talking, and not necessarily a great box office weekend, but could have become a cult classic. But instead, it's just kind of another movie that's it's better than average. It's a smart little thriller that, keeps you guessing. And ultimately, what you thought was going to happen is how you get there. But how you get there, you do start doubting where you're, what you're thinking, where you think it's going to go. And that, even me telling you that's not going to change it. When you watch it, if you invested yourself, you're going to really go for a ride. And it's, for that alone, it's a fine, good movie that I enjoy. I don't know. There's something that if you had kind of, same thing I had a problem with Man on Fire. It's just like, if you just kind of went a different direction, it would have been really dark, but it would have been, and I'm not just saying it because I like dark. Right. I'm saying it because of the premise, it's hard to get out of it. And the way they get out of it is, I don't want to quite call it eye-rolling, but it's kind of convenient and easy. But there's something you could have done to really get out of it, and it made it make sense. But But a lot of movies that do that don't get theatrical releases, so...
I loved the final moments of this movie. I thought the cross-cutting was incredible between the time periods. I thought that was really exceptionally well done.
I disagree completely.
I thought it was intense. I really did. I bought into the intensity of it, the way it built, and I especially love the score of this movie is incredible. That is a great score, and that score was really selling me on how that was playing out.
It was intense, but it was also just kind of like, that's where I get hung up. It was just like, that's too easy. I don't know. There should have been, I don't know. It just seemed too easy for me. It should have been more difficult. But otherwise, it was intense. To me, you go the negative route. And I'm not just saying that because that's probably what would have, obviously this couldn't really happen, but I think if it goes negative and the bad stuff happens, all of a sudden everybody's like, holy shit, they really had the balls to go there. And instead they made the theatrical movie that was a little safer. But again, it's still a good watch and an intense thriller that I think people will enjoy. The audience score is very high. The critic score is very low. But critics aren't watching it the right way, I don't think.
I think part of what holds this movie back is the title. That title makes no sense.
I've had a hard time with it all, especially with our classic last week and the...
yeah.
I can't remember the name of it ever. That's the problem.
Don't Look Back, wasn't it?
Don't Let Go, or...
I thought you were talking about the classic.
Oh, yeah, Don't Look Back. Well, just one so close to the classic.
Right.
But I could never remember the name of this movie, so
it's
I literally
so generic, and it really doesn't relate to anything in the story. It vaguely...
Vague, yeah.
Very vaguely alludes to the story, but not nearly enough. They really needed a better title, and they abandoned this movie so quickly, just dumping it out over Labor Day weekend with no promotion whatsoever. It's really a bummer, because they made a good movie here, and they.
Did both of our theaters even have it?
Yeah.
As of today, one of them didn't. So that was kind of a shame. But yeah, you'll enjoy it if you watch it when it comes to streaming services later on, or head to the theater if it's still around you. It is worth seeing.
Did it even make it into the top 10? I'm not even sure if it made it into the top 10 this week, which is something considering it was the only new release of the weekend.
Well, it's definitely not in the top 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 47 meters down beat it.
Jesus.
The Peanut Butter Falcon beat it. Dora, Angry Birds 2, Overcomer, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
Why not just sell this to Netflix or something? Really? Like, if you're going to abandon it this badly.
Well, in the set one, the budget was only $5 million, so they are at 2.4.
Well, that's good.
But the weekend gross, the number one movie was 11.8.
Yeah,
so
it was rough. What was number one?
Angel Has Fallen.
I hate you, America.
I guess I could look at the 4-day weekend. Maybe it's a little better. Nope, it's 15 on the all, if you count the all 4 days. Wow.
That is brutal.
But yeah, still with 4 days, 14.8 with Angel Has Fallen.
I mean, Labor Day's never been a big weekend for movie releases.
I think Halloween's still the number one opening weekend on a Labor Day weekend. Rob Zombie's Halloween. Do you want to talk about Wild Rose, or do you want to save it for another week?
I mean, Wild Rose is a wonderful movie. It's the story of a Scottish country music singer. Jessie Buckley is the star here, who will probably become more prominent once Judy comes out. She's in that with Renee Zellweger. But yeah, she's from Scotland. She's a country singer. She's just out of jail and wanting to return to her career singing country music and eventually make her way to Nashville. But that's complicated by the fact that she's got 2 kids. And her mom is the absolutely wonderful actress whose name is now escaping me. Is just phenomenal actress, but she wants her to be responsible for her kids. She's also on house arrest for a time period, so she's got an ankle bracelet, so she's not allowed to leave at night, which makes it hard for her to get out and find time to sing. She ends up taking a job as a maid in a house in another neighborhood nearby, a very rich neighborhood, and her boss catches her singing and decides, wow, I want to do something to help you. And that leads her to on this journey where she's going to eventually get to go to Nashville. Where it goes from there, you have to see for yourself. This movie is fantastic, though, and she is a powerhouse. Jessie Buckley, she can sing, she can belt like nobody's business. She's amazing, and the way the unique idea of a Scottish country music star, there's this amazing subculture of country music in Scotland that people aren't aware of, in England, the UK, that people probably aren't aware of, that really gives this a very unique place to exist.
That's cool. Yeah, I had no idea. I just happened to pop on your review on Facebook as we were getting ready for the podcast, so I wasn't prepared for any.
Well, thanks for reading it.
No problem. Thanks for reading anything on Facebook, really. It's been a crazy week. Like every other week. I keep saying that over and over again. But I did see a lot of movies. Where do you want to start with the Netflix one? Do you have a preference, or want me just to go in my order of list?
Go right ahead.
The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
All right. Yeah, this is the Last Black Man in San Francisco. Stars Jimmy Fails as Jimmy Fails, which is interesting. Oh gosh, I forgot his name. Jonathan Majors is his best friend, Mont. And they are extraordinarily close, really great friends. The plot essentially is that Jimmy is in love with a house that he grew up in as a kid. It means the world to him. It's his entire existence is based off of loving this one house that he grew up in, that he lived in until he was about 6 years old, and then he just keeps going back to all the time. To the point where there's a couple living there now that every time they seem to leave, he shows up and begins to fix the house, painting it or taking care of it, watering the plants. To the point they keep returning home, going, "Get the hell out of here! What are you doing, you crazy person?" So eventually, though, they get kicked out of the house. They have to leave, this couple, and he takes the opportunity to squat in the house, he and Mont, and they begin to restore the house and live there, and he begins to relive some of his memories of childhood. Meanwhile, Mont is working on a play that he's an incredible performer here. Jonathan Majors really is just, the way he finds this character just constantly inspired by everything that he sees. He takes inspiration from everything he sees and builds this towards this really extraordinary and passionate one-man show that he puts on in the house, in the attic of the house. That is a powerful moment and really an incredible thing to build to. You could read this movie so many different ways. It's very slow. It's very unique. You got to be on its wavelength to buy into it, but I really did. And one of the ways to read it is that there's almost a love triangle going on here, where you've got these two guys who may or may not have feelings for each other, and then you've got Jimmy in this house, and the house is this third leg of this very strange love triangle, to the point where there's even a secret about the house that threatens to break them up. Which is, I thought that was really fascinating and very unique. Now that's kind of a hot take look at it in some ways. Like you could probably find homoerotic subtext in just about anything if you watch closely enough.
Well, even if you lose a homoerotic, it's two friends that are look at Superbad. Those two friends that just kind of exist together, and everybody knows them as together, and I mean that definitely plays a role in the movie. Don't forget the city. I mean, San Francisco alone is a character in the movie to an extent. I mean, the house kind of represents San Francisco in a lot of ways. But I mean, I'm glad I watched it. It's not a movie I'll probably go back to, but it's very well done, very well performed. Just kind of a smart little movie that I haven't totally figured out, but some of the simple stuff is really pretty powerful. I thought, the whole, you don't have to exist, be yourself. You don't have to exist as a city or as a house or as your race or whatever you are. You could be your individual, and that simple message alone was really well done, let alone everything else in it. It just kind of a neat little movie, but you're right, it is kind of slow, it's kind of long, not necessarily for everybody, but I would recommend it. But it's not one of those ones where I'll probably. I don't want to say I'll forget about it, but if someone brings it up, it might take someone bringing it up for me to remember I saw it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good, if nothing else.
Classically A24.
Yeah, classically couldn't get my wife to watch it with me. Couldn't get my wife to watch any of these with me. I was like, really? Not this one? That one's too weird. What about this one? That one's too weird. What about this one? That one's too weird. Okay. I wouldn't call this one weird, but it definitely has its own style. That
Quirky.
Yeah. Under the Silver Lake.
Oh boy. The director of It Follows, in case you didn't know, has directed this movie, Under the Silver Lake, starring Andrew Garfield as a really super lazy guy in the vein of The Dude in many ways. He doesn't really like to do anything, but he kind of likes playing detective a little bit. And he ends up playing detective when a woman he meets, played by Riley Keough, goes missing. He meets her one night. She's living in the apartment building that he lives in. They have a night together where they seem to almost connect romantically. He wakes up the next day and she's gone. Her entire apartment's empty. And there are no clues as to how this is even remotely possible. He falls down this rabbit hole of searching for clues. He follows a girl to a party, and a series of parties, trying to figure out where she's going. That leads him to a band that he begins to obsess about and listen to, and find their lyrics lead him to a particular place and a particular time, and into places there where you can't even imagine where a movie would go. I was fascinated and repelled by this movie at the same time, because I find that the female characters in this movie are just ridiculously mistreated throughout. I don't like anything about the way that women are portrayed in this movie at all. And then you've got the other aspects of it that are really fascinating, like this bizarre, truly bizarre mystery that goes to very strange and wonderfully unique places about what rich people do and the oddity of the rich. And then you've got subliminal messages everywhere and finding subliminal messages everywhere, which is something I'm kind of weirdly obsessed with over time. Especially there's a character in the movie known just as the songwriter. And that scene between Andrew Garfield and the songwriter is such a incredibly strange, intense, unusual, uncomfortable scene. I was fascinated. This basically, the idea is that the songwriter has been putting subliminal messages in. He's written every song ever, and anybody you've ever liked has been lying to you your entire life because this guy actually wrote their song that they're known for. And the just watching Andrew Garfield just slowly die inside as he realized that everything he's ever loved in music has been taken from him. It's just, the way it plays out is awesome. It really is.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It was creative. It was neat. I thought Andrew Garfield was phenomenal. He really, to me, he's what holds this movie together. But it also kind of reminds me of the guy who did Donnie Darko, that movie he did after that.
Southland Tales?
Yeah, it was kind of a mess. I kind of felt the same thing here. It wasn't quite, Lynchian or, some of those, even Malick or anybody else. It just was a little short on that for me. And maybe it's because all the references were my era of things, Nirvana, Nintendo, all that stuff. But it just kind of seemed, I don't know. I appreciate the message, but I just kind of felt like the movie itself was a mess. And even the ending was just like, okay, that's kind of... So he figures everything out, and everything he thought was true, and he's just going to accept it. Kind of bugs me. Just normally...
And the way this guy is consistently rewarded with sex, whatever he does, he's consistently rewarded with sex, just bothered me throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me.
Maybe that's the intention. Maybe that's the satire, and I just didn't understand the joke.
I think you understood it just fine. I think it was more one, this is why you need more. This is why you need more African American directors, more women directors, so that this movie can exist with other, other perspectives. So we're, that kind of thinking doesn't have to keep happening, but because it's not really relevant to the movie, but it is because this is, what I'm saying. We get too much of it. And you're right, but at the same time, there are characters who are kind of free spirits in real life, but it's still, I don't know.
I don't like the credits bother me. Like the one woman is listed just solely as topless woman. Another woman he has sex with is just known as actress. Like the dehumanizing of those characters. I mean, throughout there's a number. The only one who has a name is the girl who goes missing.
Right. I mean, I don't want to defend misogyny because I'm not, but like the songwriter didn't have a name. Nobody really had names other than like the author and him. I can't remember anybody's names really, but because of that, it was just like he's trying to be too cute, and to me, it's kind of a mess. It's an entertaining mess, if nothing else, but.
I like the idea of a modern detective story. I love the idea that he's named Sam. That because that's Sam
right.
Spade, that kind of thing. I like the Coen brothers touches, with the music throughout, and the the way that he's a constant victim of bizarre happenings that kind of reminded me a little bit of the Coen brothers. I like that aspect of it. And Andrew Garfield is really, really good in this movie.
Andrew Garfield saves the movie for me. I'll compare it to Boondock Saints. What the hell? What he did in that movie was just trying to copy Tarantino. This is this guy trying to be Coen brothers or Lynch, and then he's not being himself. And to me, because of that, it's a little bit of a mess. But that said, I'm cool. I'm okay with that it exists. Aside from the misogyny stuff, which I think would be less if we had more female directors. I think this movie could exist in its own world if that were the case, but we don't. But if nothing else, it's cool to see a director get full creative control and go for it. I just think he kind of missed a little bit. And then there's Climax.
Climax, yes. Gaspar Noé, the director here, of course, best known for Irreversible, that malignant tumor of a movie. This is similar in that vein, because he just does not. He really doesn't care whether you like it or not. He reminds me a lot, in a way, of Uwe Ball, in that he doesn't. He's like a talented version of Uwe Ball. He doesn't really care if you're entertained at all. He's just going to do his thing the way he wants it. The way he wants to do it, and if you happen to see it. Yeah, all right, fine. Whatever.
I guess I'd put him more like in the Lars von Trier type of. He definitely doesn't care whether you like it or not.
He literally, a quote from him talking about this movie when he found out that he was getting good reviews for it. He goes, "I guess I did something wrong."
Something wrong, yeah.
Like,
because every other movie he's done has been polarizing. You have people that love it, people that hate it. This one seems to be universally loved, aside from maybe one person. It sounds like.
Yeah, I get it. I don't know what did he even do. I mean, really, what does he even do here? What's going on? This is a mess. I mean, the idea here is that a group of dancers are having a party after a gig. Somebody spikes the sangria with LSD, and everybody starts freaking out. And from there's a lot of times when things are happening that you can't really tell what's happening. There's a lot of things not happening. There's lots of screaming. There's some violence. There's a couple of moments that are really shocking. Nothing that he lingers on too much, and not everything has to have a point. I mean, I don't really know what the point of Last Black Man in San Francisco really is, but I really enjoyed those characters and being around those people. I don't really know what the point of this is. This seems pointless in a way that is intended to be provocative and like provocative, like in that. Well, you make up what I'm doing here. Like, you decide what I've done. Okay, fine. Just stop hitting me, Gaspar Noé. Stop hitting me. I get it.
Yeah,
You're arty.
it's definitely a style over substance type movie. There's two really long shots. One that's like 15 minutes long. One that's literally 42 minutes long.
Yeah.
The plot of the movie, really, I should call it a plot. From the mid-movie credits to the end of the movie is a 42-minute long shot. And if nothing else, I was just kind of, it had me glued. I got hooked into it, and I was just kind of like following it around and just kind of lost in the movie. And for that alone, I guess I would say it's a success. I think I'd give it thumbs up. I don't know what it really is about. It's just really a dance party acid trip, which is what it is.
But I do appreciate that he's making a drug movie where he doesn't use any kind of camera tricks to try and take you inside the trip. It's from definitely entirely outside of the trip. You know, normally in a drug movie, he'll use some kind of weird like camera, and he does do some like twisting camera stuff where he's looking up and he's got, you know, odd perspectives, but it's not that whooshing camera where things are going out of focus and, you know, trying to give you a sense of what the trip is like for the people in the movie, because he doesn't care about these characters at all.
I kind of disagree with that, but at the same, I mean, what I found neat about, because reading about it afterwards, because after you watch it, you're just like, oh, what did I just see? So you go and look it up, and there was no script. Every character played however they felt like they'd react on acid. None of them were on acid. They did the stuff at the beginning that they all improvised. You know, he had kind of a direction where he wanted to go with like 3 characters. The rest kind of did their own thing, and he just kind of let them do their thing while he walked around with the camera. And I don't know. Sometimes when you get hooked into a movie, you don't question anything. You just kind of go for the ride. And if it was kind of intense, especially the mom and her kid. That was tough to watch and uncomfortable the entire time. Some of the violence was really uncomfortable. Some people, I mean, the incest was weird. There's your title of the podcast. Wasn't even planning that. I don't know. It's uniquely its own thing. You know, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad that someone can make a movie like this, and I don't find it offensive or anything. I think Under the Silver Lake's probably more offensive than this is, because the characters did their own thing. Everything they did was up to them. Anybody who was naked, they got naked on their own. The director didn't ask them to. So it was an art movie, and he definitely has his own style, and I think I like it better than anything else he does, whether that's saying much or not. I didn't really like Enter the Void. I'm one of the guys who likes Irreversible, but yeah, it's available on Amazon for free. It's pretty short. And when you got to the mid-credit sequence, what were you like, what the hell's going on? Or
I kind of nodded off a few times during this movie.
Especially at that point, because nothing was happening.
Yeah.
You had a little mini documentary and then like a 15-minute dance sequence.
Yeah.
Then the credits rolled and you're like, okay. Like literally the soundtrack and everything pops up, and then the movie happens, and then those songs that they put in the soundtrack show up later on in the movie. But I don't know.
I think sometimes with him it's just provocation for the sake of provocation, and I find that to be an empty experience of a movie, and that's kind of what I felt here, was just kind of empty. Which maybe that's the point. I don't know.
I think that's what happens when you get to these abstract, little weird movies. You know, like Tree of Life for me felt empty, but to you it spoke to you. You know, and this one it grabbed me for whatever reason. I can't explain it. You know, these weird art movies, they grab. It's totally hypocritical of me to say I hate Tree of Life, and I'm like this. This could be called Tree of Death for all. You know, really, it's kind of what it is.
Interestingly, though, it does speak to that love of darkness that you have, whereas Tree of Life is an extraordinarily positive movie.
Right. And yeah, definitely if this was just all happy dancing and everybody enjoying the acid trip, I'd be like, this is boring. When they start killing each other. But yeah, that's Climax. It's available on Amazon right now. So is Under the Silver Lake.
The Silver Lake.
And if you want to rent Last Black Man in San Francisco, it's there as well. Anything else before you move on? Or Midsommar, the director's cut's in the theaters. The rest of this week, too.
Weird, right? And totally unexpected. Didn't see that coming. One showing in town this weekend at 9:45 at night.
Yeah, every night until like Wednesday this week, they're showing between 9:20 and 9:45 showing.
Like and only at one of our theaters locally. It's weird. It's
the one that doesn't have Don't Let Go.
So what's different? The difference is it's a typical director's cut where you look at it and you go, yeah, I see why you took that out. Yeah, I see why you took that out. The main, I think the one that really gets a lot of attention is there's a scene immediately after the suicide scene where it's another ritual that they do that is shocking, and you go, well, yeah, I mean, you just did a really shocking ritual. You're probably going to not need to do another super shocking ritual again. The idea that basically that they've gone down to a river. It's in those rare moments where they have a little bit of darkness, which again, I think it was better to keep it in the daylight more than there are two scenes that he's added back in here that are set in the somewhat darkness that they have there. That I think better to leave these out in that way because again, that constant sunlight is what makes this movie so unnerving. So for me, anyway. This scene is set at night. They're about to do another sacrifice where they've asked a little boy to step forward and be thrown into a river with a stone on his chest. His hands and arms are tied. They place a stone on his chest and they're going to rock him back and forth and toss him into a river as an offering of some sort. I can't exactly remember what the point of it was, but she steps forward and stops them. Florence Pugh does. Steps forward and says, "Don't do this." And another person behind her steps forward. "He's proven his bravery. You don't need to do this now." And then they all cheer.
Yeah, I can see why you take that out.
Yeah, and since it immediately followed the suicide scene, it wasn't necessary to have a secondary, shocking moment like that.
And it doesn't make sense why that would happen in this movie. I'm trying to remember back to the whole movie.
There was more of a logical perspective of it. They did set it up in a way that made sense.
Okay.
I'm just not recalling it very well, but that's immediately followed by a scene that it is pretty interesting, where we do kind of get a more direct confrontation between Christian and her. They have a really knockdown, drag out argument that kind of gets more to the heart of the problems that they have with each other, which I thought was interesting. Again, I can see why you cut it, because it doesn't prove necessary in the end.
Right, because we bought into that relationship anyway.
Yeah, but it does underline, and there's a little bit more of Christian being a dick added in throughout, and more of Mark being an asshole. Although I was surprised. I thought maybe we'd get to actually see what actually physically happened to Mark, and that doesn't pop up. They don't do that. They keep that the same. But I did pick out something random out of this movie that I didn't notice before that was in one of the scenes that's actually in the regular cut of the movie. During the party scene where he reveals that where they reveal that they're going to Sweden without having told her that they're going, you see a wide shot of them all standing there in a group talking, and up in the corner of the screen there's a picture of Ray Bolger as the Scarecrow from Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, because many of them turn into scarecrows at the end,
right?
Hollowed out and filled with hay. And I did try to go kind of down some kind of Wizard of Oz rabbit hole to see if there was some kind of more Wizard of Oz illusions, and you can kind of see it if you really work on it.
Was that they would? What was that movie originally? Someone had it was either like the Wizard of a Satanic Wizard of Oz or Satanic Alice in Wonderland. I can't remember how that somebody had worded this movie, or that was their tagline to put on the poster. But yeah, no, that's very interesting. Did you still come away the same, or were you sober after this movie?
I came away the same. This movie still had retained all the power that it had before for me. It's just even elongated to 2.5 hours. I mean, it was still I was like gripping the seat, and it was still that final moment just absolutely killed me. I was still sitting there going, he's talking about the bear. I was still in it.
Did you notice anything that, because we had some questions when we did the podcast last time, especially about who was a certain person, and your cousin thought it was specifically a guy or whatever. I can't remember the scene where I can't remember the names, but any questions get answered that you remember, or?
Not really. I mean, I didn't come up with any new theories on it. I enjoyed it pretty much the same way as I did before. We were wondering about the guy who was trussed up nude in the chicken coop, and I still don't know if he was
too fast to see.
Huh?
Too fast to really.
Yeah, Jeff, I think it was theorized that he was still alive, like his lungs were still. I just don't see that. I think he was dead, and I think I just don't see it that way. But yeah, and we also don't find out. We also don't see her die, his girlfriend, and we don't see that in the director's cut, which I thought maybe we'd see her murder, but we don't.
The sex scene wasn't any longer, was it?
No, the sex
Thank
scene
God.
is pretty much the same.
Uncomfortable.
In the best way.
Yeah.
So, what is it about older people in the nude that is just so amazingly awkward and weird and uncomfortable? It just immediately puts me on edge now, from Hereditary and this movie.
Well, yeah. And this one, I mean, you got just a wide variety of ages in the nude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man. Part of me thinks I'm going to try to go see it this week. My brother still hasn't seen it, and he's usually into these type of movies, but he thinks it's going to be grossly overrated. So would you take them to the director's cut, or make them see the regular one first?
Probably see the regular cut, because I mean, like I said, with the director's cut, if you're not already invested in this movie, you're probably going to go, well, why is that there? And I don't understand why they added that in there. That is not necessary.
Right.
Well, it's the director's cut. But yeah, no, I definitely could see why these scenes were cut. It doesn't make the movie any more special than it was for me.
While you're watching it, was it in the moment that you said, oh, I see why that was cut, or was it kind of more in reflection of the movie that you were like, I get why it was cut?
It was in the moment, because like I said, that the scene immediately after the suicide scene, I think that scene is so powerful. What happens in the suicide scene is so ridiculously powerful. It happens at the perfect moment. It has this intense impact on you. I think transitioning back to regular life after that is so much more interesting than moving immediately into another disturbing ritualistic moment.
Fair enough.
Even as they do set it up in a way that makes sense, and it is a shocking scene. It definitely has some shocking moments to it that are it's in the vein of this movie.
Right. But sometimes it's better to breathe a little bit between the shock. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
Well, our original classic didn't arrive in time, so we made a impromptu decision and went with Network just because Sean watched it.
Yeah. Pretty much. That was the only reasoning we had. Because we had wanted to watch a movie called Repeat Performance from 1942, which was the idea of that one is a woman commits a murder on New Year's Eve and then then she preys on it, and she's sent back to a year earlier to try and relive her life and see how things play out this time and whether or not it's going to end with a murder again. So that echoes, I guess, a little bit of Don't Let Go, but that movie didn't arrive. So I just the podcast Unspooled did Network this week, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to watch that because I got some time. And so I watched Network, and for those who don't know, this is the movie that's famous for I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And everybody gets kind of caught up in this movie about how, they predicted this movie predicts the culture. And I'm like, I don't know if it's, I mean, if you're super cynical, maybe. You get into that. I don't necessarily think it's about predicting the culture. I think it's much more about these characters now that now that I'm out of the hot take phase of it, because I used to be in that hot take phase on this movie. I see it more about these very unique characters, and I think these characters are so incredibly unique in this universe, and I really think that the writing of this movie is so spiky, and that's really the part of it that sticks to me. Like, these are nasty lines in here that really get to the heart of something, and that the relationship that really matters to me isn't anything to do with the I'm mad as hell stuff. It's more about William Holden and
oh my god, really famous actors.
This is embarrassing. Because I've been living in this movie now with the Unspooled podcast, listening to it. I should have her name right at the top of my head, and I don't. We're gonna cut this out, right?
Maybe.
This is embarrassing.
Come on, IMDb, get up here. Oh my god, what the hell is
Faye Dunaway?
Faye Dunaway.
So it's about the relationship between Faye Dunaway and William Holden, and the kind of old school ideas that he has about news being challenged by the new school of news and entertainment. I thought that was a really powerful thing, but it's also about an old man having a midlife crisis or late in life crisis and wanting to sleep with a much younger woman. I think that challenging aspect of it, and I loved the way they spoke to each other. That way they had of lacerating each other with words was fascinating. That they could take each other apart word by word, and it's beautiful. Him accusing her of making their relationship into a movie of the week, and it playing out exactly as the beats of a very mediocre movie of the week. I thought that was really tough stuff and really exceptionally well done. William Holden's pretty damn incredible. The other stuff works too. I mean, her kind of soul. I loved the sex scene, her soullessness, the way she just continues to talk about work even as they're fucking. Like, she cannot stop talking about the numbers, and my daytime schedule is still getting beat by NBC, and I got to figure out a way to beat them. I thought that was really great, and this made her character feel so very specific. You could blow this out and make connections between, like, this is commenting on this and this is commenting on the downfall of the news business. But I don't know. I think there are still plenty of good news guys out there who want to actually do the news, and I'm not as cynical as Network is. I probably used to be.
I mean, I don't know. There's definitely, doesn't even have to just be the news. It's, kind of power in general. And, with ratings comes power, and especially in the entertainment news area. I don't know. I think saying it predicted the future is giving it more credit than it deserves. I mean, it was kind of predicting the then and now, at the time. It's not, the stuff isn't new. We just now have access to it easier with, all the information that's available.
Interestingly enough, on the Unspooled, when they were talking about it, they talked about Glenn Beck, and they talk about Keith Olbermann and other people who kind of fall into this Finch kind of vibe, but I kept thinking, like, I get that, but Lonesome Roads is way more of a better correlative. A Face in the Crowd is a much better version of this.
Right. And I mean, even 1984 captures what happened better. I mean, this is specifically to the news, I guess, but
that's not Network. Network is incredible. I think it's a great movie. But in terms of like being more prescient and a movie that is more influential, that people really should pay more attention to, A Face in the Crowd is way more. Like, that movie should terrify. That movie should chill you to your bones. Whereas this one is kind of nasty and mean, and I think more specific to these characters than it is to, and to its own universe than it is to try and take it out of that context.
I like it. I think it's a little over the top, but otherwise, I mean, it's really good movie. You know, I definitely think it's one of the top 3 movies of that great year. It's Josh's favorite. It's better than All the President's Men. But yeah, I mean, that was a great year in movies, and Taxi Driver came out that year too. I still take Taxi Driver as far and away better, but it definitely, as a standalone movie, I like it a lot. It's a lot of great acting, and that line is, you know, iconic, but to me a little on the over the top. So I mean, I don't know. It's definitely a classic, but I probably don't like it as much as everybody else does. But I do like it, if that makes any sense.
I was surprised that you know, because I used to be in that hot take group that was like, oh, network, yeah, that predicts the future. That's the movie that's the here and now. That's the news business is shit because it's all about just entertaining people now and not about telling the truth. And you know, you can take that and make that into your take if you want to, but watching it again, I've found myself more interested in these very specific characters in this very specific universe, and that to me was far more interesting than any macro take on it where you're looking at it from a larger perspective on the culture.
Yeah.
I also loved the communists. They're great too. The way she comes in with her agent and her lawyer, and I got to give 10% to William Morris, and I got production costs. Like the emptiness of that was just that's really a wonderful comment on television culture.
And for me, I almost like movies better that aren't intending to comment on the culture. Like when you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre back when you first saw it, I don't think that was trying to say anything specific. I just think it did because of what was going on and the way it just kind of happened organically. I do think they are trying to say something about the culture in this movie, but I think, like you said, where it's better is in the characters and the acting and the story more so than the hot takeness. I also think too, because of our age, you know, I don't think it's fair to give it credit for predicting the future. I think it was happening then, you know. But whatever.
Oh yeah, news was becoming, you know, car crack stuff. I mean, just 2 years before this, Christine Chubbuck took her own life on the air because she was tired of the growing culture of, you know, more blood, more violence, more ugliness on the news.
Right.
At least that's what she claimed was her motivation for taking her own life on the air.
Right, and the whole Watergate thing became such a sensation. Probably one of the first sensationalized stories. Maybe it was even before that. Anything else on network before we move on?
You know, in terms of movies that you want to talk about, movies that are predicting the culture or are more, I think, more culturally relevant. I keep going back to Nashville as being far more interesting in terms of a commentary on the time in which it exists than even this movie. And I don't think that movie gets enough credit.
Good point. 1989, I didn't see any of these movies, but I'll mention them just to put them in the show notes. Relentless and Cage. Either one ring a bell.
I meant to watch Cage because I was curious what Cage was. Like, is this... Because I know it, at a certain point there was like a movie that was like well ahead of the MMA thing. I was like, is that this movie? Is this the movie that was about mixed martial arts?
No.
Okay.
Lou Ferrigno, a GI in Vietnam, saved his buddy's life, but in the progress, is shot in the head.
Never mind.
The injury results in brain damage to the point where he has basically a child's brain in a very large...
So wait, is this a drama?
Very large man's body. Either that or a comedy.
Oh, God, now I desperately need to see this movie.
When they get out of the army, the two open up a bar together.
What?
But some local gangsters make things tough for them after they refuse to take part in brutal cage matches. Maybe you are right. Where fighters battle to the point where you serious injury and or death. Wow.
What in
This
God's
is like 15 movies in one.
Oh my God, this movie sounds amazing.
It's like Platoon, and then it turns into like Rain Man, and then it turns into like Roadhouse, and then it turns into Bloodsport.
Oh my God! I think
How did we miss this?
I think we're going to hold this one over till next week because this sounds too amazing to miss.
If we can find it anywhere.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's going to be the big challenge.
Wow.
That just what a I'm getting like Supervan flashbacks here, like something that just
that was disappointing.
But it had a premise though that was like, I've got to know what this is.
$35 on Amazon.
Okay, it's not $35 worth of interesting. Is it on YouTube?
I'm looking.
Because it's not $35 worth of interesting. I'm sorry. As much as I'm dedicated to finding truly epically terrible films. Which this sounds remarkable.
Holy shit, it might be.
It's on YouTube.
Come on, start. Oh my god. All right, let's go to 34 minutes. Woman dies in bar explosion. This looks like it is on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay, folks, get ready. Cage is on the show next week.
He gets shot in the head and has a baby brain.
Oh, my God. What?
Opens up a bar and turns into a cage fighter. Wow. This is like, I mean, if Gremlins 2, you know, that Key and Peele sketch. If this had been more popular, that would have been.
All right, stop. At some point, you have to stop pitching.
Man.
I can't wait.
This is almost like a Hot Shots movie. It's kind of like the beginning of Hot Shots Part 2. Right. Up until the M&Ms.
It just keeps grabbing different movies to parody throughout. Oh, it's gonna be. It can only be a disappointment from here.
So next week, that is our show. It Chapter 2, The Spy on Netflix. We talked about at the beginning of the show, and then our 89 Kickboxer in Cage. Imagining Kickboxer is way less interesting.
Call it Brain Injury Week.
Our classic is Notorious, but I think it might be Cage. Notorious is from 1946, but yeah, we'll post Cage on our Facebook page so everybody can watch it.
Do a watch along.
Wow. This show just got fun. It's fun when mid-episode, out of nowhere, you come up with something that you never thought of existed.
No. Wow.
God.
I don't know why I had such a vague memory of this movie. I have no reason why this would ever occur to me, but
just the fact that they said he has baby brain in the summary of this movie. Man.
And it's Lou Ferrigno. Oh, man.
Wow. Imagine,
I mean, that's a dramatic beat to have to play if you're a giant man.
And I don't want to make fun of the fact that he's deaf, but if that's what they use to make him look like he has baby brain, that's going to be highly
truly offensive.
But he agreed to do it, so hopefully they paid him well.
Wow.
So yeah, that's next week. I do want to thank our Patreon supporters before I let you go. Our key group level, Charlie Messing and Jason Bryant. Our character actor level, Josh and Beth Paul, Cousin Jeff and Christina Cato. Our special effects level, Corey Finneran and Sarah Morrell. And our movie star, Dave Sievers. If you want a credit on the show, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon to get yourself one. If you want to just do a one-off donation, there's a PayPal link. And we also have our podcast merch tab that's up there as well. We are planning a bunch of bonus episodes here in the next few months. So those will be hitting Patreon for you. So if you want to hear those, become a Patreon supporter. It doesn't matter what level, and you'll have access to the bonus material. And otherwise, we'll jump to Flick Chart. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
I know what you did. Oh, I still know what you did last summer. Unforgiven.
I think it's Unforgiven. I think even George agrees with that.
Yeah, good. I've been playing with George the whole time. I was worried he wasn't here. Lady in the Water, Dumb and Dumber. Kind of would describe Lady in the Water.
It's Dumb and Dumber.
The Little Mermaid, 1989, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Harry Potter for me.
I will go Little Mermaid. It's my favorite Disney movie. And it is Harry Potter.
Is that why you're protesting this new one?
Nope. Looking forward to it. The Hunger Games Catching Fire, Dirty Harry.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, why not? Fuck Clint Eastwood. If it was Magnum Force, I might go Magnum Force. Zombieland or Shoot 'em Up.
Man, I love Zombieland. I have a soft spot for Shoot 'em Up that is way more than it should be. But I'll go Zombieland.
Yeah, I mean, I like Shoot 'em Up, but Zombieland, I really like that movie a lot.
Shoot 'em Up is audacious. Like, that is, like, Clive Owen as Bugs Bunny. That's basically the movie.
Well, it's one of those, we talked about Lucky Number 11 last week. Not that they're alike, but it's movies that are good that people just didn't see or forgot about.
Yeah. I know there's also a lot of people who really hate Shoot 'em Up.
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, there's a large group out there that really didn't like that movie.
And like Aces High or something like that.
I love that movie, yeah. With Affleck as
kind of as
Ryan Reynolds.
Wow, that both of them were not doing well.
Yeah, was that Joe Carnahan?
Maybe, I
think that was a Joe Carnahan movie. Smoking Aces, yeah.
Smoking Aces, yeah.
Hell of a good movie.
Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
You get your wish. I could never vote for Deuce Bigelow.
Yeah, I mean, the remakes.
I hate Texas Chainsaw Massacre the remake, but Deuce Bigelow is a flaming pile of shit.
Yeah, the remake, I remember at the time loving it because I was a kid, but it's just very typical, so for that alone, it's better than Deuce Bigelow. Castaway or Crocodile Dundee 2?
Castaway.
Agree. You don't mess with the Zohan, a joke Sean made earlier today. And Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
I mean, Zohan would be a perfect correlative with with the spy. I do have to pick Sandler over Transformers.
I agree. They're kind of one and the same, but Sandler came first. The Return of Jafar doesn't count. That went straight to video. Transformers, School of Rock.
School of Rock.
Triple X, Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise.
The Perfect Storm, Road Trip.
Whew, that's actually harder than it seems because I get a soft spot for Road Trip that I shouldn't have.
I do too, but the more I see Todd Phillip movies, the more I think he's a pretty good director. I mean, definitely coming from the male point of view, but
Perfect Storm because I still remember that theatrical experience.
I saw it on video, so I don't know if that's fair for me to vote against it, but I do remember my road trip experience. Being a big Varsity Blues fan. Let me flip the coin. Road Trip. One Hour Photo, The Mansion, 2017. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's the Paul Walker. Yeah, just skip that.
An ensemble. 1 Hour Photo, Point Break, 1991.
It's a 1 hour photo.
Agree. Being John Malkovich, Patch Adams.
Being John Malkovich. Fuck Patch Adams.
I'm not going to say fuck Patch Adams, but it's definitely Being John Malkovich. Wow, I'm getting lucky today, maybe. Jeepers Creepers, Event Horizon.
Jeepers Creepers.
Going Event Horizon. At least it had the balls to go to hell.
It's hell to sit through.
Jeepers Creepers. Pretty Woman, Braveheart. Wow, this is just like, fuck you, Sean Day.
I do hate Pretty Woman far more than I hate Braveheart, so.
Wow, what else can we have? Walk the Line, Saw 3.
Fuck.
Isn't it hard when you know it's a decent movie, but you got to pick a Saw movie over it?
I don't have as much shame as most people might have about Saw.
I know, but still.
One of these days, I got to sit down and write my book about Saw. I really do. Yeah, I'm going to go Saw 3.
I will too. I don't love Walk the Line.
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
I appreciate it a lot.
Amadeus, Total Recall.
Amadeus.
Agreed. Deliverance, Blade 2.
Blade 2.
I'll just let you vote alone as I haven't seen Deliverance.
Yeah, we should bring that to the show sometime. Put that on the list. Make me watch Deliverance.
I mean, I know a lot about it. I can play dueling banjos. Hide and Seek, Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3.
I hate hide and seek more than most movies. Just flat out cheated. It's just not fair. Pan's Labyrinth, Toy Story.
Whew, wow, that is rough. Those are really good movies. Toy Story.
Just for fun, I'll let George vote. It's Pan's Labyrinth for me, but again, it's just simply dark over light. Hold on one second, folks.
Dang it, George, get back over here.
His head. What is first? Pan's Labyrinth.
All right.
Sure is slow today. Michael Clayton, Shanghai Nights.
Michael Clayton.
Agreed.
Come on, Flick Chart.
Gotta give us something to go out on.
Get it together,
Or give
Flick
us
Chart.
something, period. Splash Piranha.
Is it's Splash or Piranha?
Yeah, but not the remake, like the old one from the 70s or whatever.
What?
There's a... I don't know.
I thought you were talking about Splash. I'm like, what?
No, Splash,
the Tom Hanks, Ron Howard movie.
right.
Yeah, that one.
Scary Movie 2, Fight Club.
Fight Club. Yeah, I don't know why I thought about that. There was nothing to think about.
Natural Born Killers, Old School.
Old School.
God, you're going so good there for a second. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Come on! Star Trek.
I'll go with you on that one. That's kind of the Rocky IV of Star Trek movies. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, When Worlds Collide, 1951.
I'm not familiar with that one. I would pick it over that movie for sure, but...
All right, no, this is better. This is way better than that. This will be what we go out on into. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, The Hills Have Eyes remake.